Welcome back to Bits and Boards. I'm Anthony Krolikowski, and today we're going to have another game developer on, which, if you remember, last time we had that, we talked about Kingdoms of the Dump, which is a game that launched on Steam and I'm pretty sure a couple other platforms, and that was a good time. It was just one game. Now we have a developer here who has a collection of games that he goes around and sells at certain conventions, so I'm going to introduce him right here, Richard Colleri of Angry Hammer Games. First, Richard, just thank you for joining us. Right now we're filming on Christmas Eve, and they'll probably air the week after that, but thank you for making some time to come in. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So just first, I know we talked about when our original communication here is what really got you into the game space. So if you want to touch on first, your first interaction with games and kind of what really made you like them.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can try to give you a quick life dump of my story here. But,
yeah, go ahead.
So I really got into games at a young age. I started off playing the Atari 2600. So I'm a bit of an 80s, 90s kid. If you're familiar with Atari games, they're kind of basic, but they have something that's really simple and can kind of capture a gameplay. And I used to be addicted a lot to Asteroids and Defender and that kind of thing.
That was my dad's stuff too, so I understand. Yep.
Yeah, and I used to have fond memories of going to yard sales and buying cartridges and that kind of thing. And as they got older, obviously they got Nintendo, Super Nintendo, that kind of fun stuff. But one thing that kind of was interesting, my parents, for better or for worse, they kind of restricted my gameplay because back then, games are kind of frowned upon. I think, me growing up with the previous generation was new to games itself. So they didn't know how to handle it. So obviously, moderation is always the best key. So I wasn't allowed to play games during school time. It had to be like, winter break or summer. So that holding back kind of just made me want games more.
Yeah, it only helped fuel your fire.
Right, it definitely did.
The addiction of games.
Yeah. And, fast forward a bunch in high school, one of my best friends, we played a lot of PC games growing up. My dad would buy these floppy disks at yard sales, and when we would swap, and me and my best friend. But yeah, my friend was pretty smart. He was a math grade ahead, and he got one of those fancy calculators that they forced you to buy, the TI 83 plus calculators. I'm not sure how it's done nowadays, but those were $100 calculators back then, and they came with a big, thick manual. And he was showing me, hey, I was making some games on these things, and it was some basic programming stuff. And I saw that, and I was really jealous. And as soon as I, jumped in the right math grade, my parents, bit the bullet and bought this expensive calculator with a big manual. And that was my big turning point in my life. Something snapped in me, and I just I jumped into it. And most people see a giant, thick, inch-thick manual with a calculator and run from it. But I read that thing hard, like for the first time ever, and half of it obviously was some advanced math stuff, but the other half was about programming. It literally went over basic language, and it went over a lot of the details of programming, if statements and loops, go-tos, and that kind of thing. And the other half was about functions, advanced functions with calculator, how to store variables, recall them, and yeah, I started making games like crazy with it, and had a little cable and was transferring games to other kids at school. And I was the cool kid at school that was transferring games. Like, hey, are you the guy with games? And because I never had anything like a Game Boy growing up, I always wanted one. But this was my chance of oh, look, I have something that can play games. I just got to make them myself, And the big turning point for me also was I was in a pre-calculus class with a math. There was a particular math test for me that the math test had like 12 questions on it, and they're pretty complicated, and you were allowed to use your graphing calculator. And the teacher went through, and she wiped out the memory on the calculators, but obviously I had backups, and I knew how to archive things. But, what I ended up doing was I did one of the math questions, right, out of the 12 or how many there was, and then I made a program to solve the other 11. And so, end of the test, I handed it in, and she saw my work for one of the questions. Then she saw just answers for the other ones. So obviously, I got called in. And the teacher was like, "So, how did you cheat?" And I was like, well, I use my calculator. And she was like, show me the program you use. How do you share answers? And I just said, no, this is the program I use. And she's like, well, who gave you this program? And I was like, I wrote the program during the test. It was faster for me to write the program than it was to, get it from somewhere else or whatever. And she saw that, and I went over the code with her, and she immediately fast-tracked me, and I got out of taking some other classes that I wasn't good at, and immediately got placed into like a technical track. It was more like a prototype back then because there was no like real computer stuff. I mean, I don't know if you remember back then the Apple computers, the big Candy computers.
Not to date you too much, but I saw when you emailed me earlier and you said you graduated in 2001. Yeah. I was born a year later.
Okay. So, yeah.
I was a DS child.
Wow. Yeah. So time goes by fast, I guess. But
it certainly does.
But yeah. So the computer lab back then was very limited, to say the least. And yeah, I went on this crazy fast track that they had were experimental, and I just excelled. It was the first time I went from a B student to an A student and everything, and it was like the first time I actually cared about things. A little bit late, honestly, in high school. But yeah, I just started eating up anything technical I could get my hands on, and yeah, I ended up going to college, and I wanted to obviously go for a computer game design, whatever, but that wasn't really an option.
Which is a lot different to now what we've seen recently, right? With UAlbany now has the game design programs and the esports arenas. So it's nice to see that change. I know when I was in college, not too long ago, 5 or 7 years ago, I can't even do the quick math, but they were just like starting to talk about the idea of like esports teams. And I went to small Fulton Montgomery Community College. So colleges like that thinking of including such programs into their curriculum and extracurriculars just to show us the kind of direction we're in right now. Not to cut you off on your story, but no, keep going with where you were going with that.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely a huge difference. So it might have something to do with like the generation who grew up with games and whatnot, and how to properly view them. And like all media, there's good sides and bad sides, and I still agree with everything in moderation, of course. There's some movies that are great and some movies that are not great. There's some TV shows that are educational. There's some TV shows that are just, brain rot is the new term. Has always been around, but more relevant now than ever. But video games are just a media, There's some games that are educational, some games are more exploratory, and some games are just straight brain rot. So, it's, if my parents not knowing the difference or whatever, probably took an appropriate correction on that. But I think games nowadays, it's much more accepted. And from a media perspective, they actually generate a ton of money. I think the gaming industry makes more revenue than I think the movies and the show industry combined, I think.
Yeah, Pokemon is one of the biggest. There is the biggest media franchise, and they're started as a game and branched out into cards and TV and everything else you can think of under the sun. So.
Oh yeah, and it's I feel like I'm arriving a little bit late in the gaming world to like, hey, I want to make games too, and now everyone's got these degrees in it, and I have been kind of at it. I'll say for like 20 years, but it's more like self-made knowledge and education on that. So I've had a lot of books, watched a lot of educational stuff, try to self-teach myself. But I had to take a different route to actually pay the bills. So I did go to school for computer science, and I kind of support more of the infrastructure side of things. Kind of the jack of all trades, master of none. I was never good enough to get a software developing job, but kind of branched out. I like to get my hands on hardware and whatnot too. So. But yeah, I've really kind of pushing this hobby, more of like, I like making games, and I never really sold them to pay the bills, more just for fun, and I like to share them,
Yeah, of course. I can kind of relate to you when you talked about you went to school, obviously, not that gaming was something you went to school for that time, but just something kind of similar or adjacent, and then branched off into this and really of trying to really pursue this. When I started here at News 10, I just came out of a 2-year degree for behind-the-scenes stuff, photography and art in that realm, and then moved into reporting in front of the camera, which was a similar skill set, but not the same, and obviously took some fine-tuning, but it's definitely you know what you really like eventually, and then you make it work, and obviously you take it from there. And I know you have a nice string of games that you've made, and maybe in my eyes they're more kind of like a mini game collection. So just want to kind of run me through that list of the games that you've made so far, and just maybe some highlights of what you really like about them, what you learned about them through the process.
Yeah, so I've been making lots of games, again, for about 20 years. And what's really helped me a bunch, I mean, I've made games in BASIC, Visual Basic, C, Java, and for a while I was making games out of in Excel. You know, I'm stuck at work, and hey, why not make some games in Excel? And actually, there's a interesting background in that too. But
I was gonna say that's kind of funny to hear. I know we think of like crazy ways to make something like that run, but the spreadsheets. I think I've heard of that, but like hearing it again is just kind of like very surprising.
Yeah, it's I had a lot of night shift jobs, and when you're bored and you're kind of locked in a cage, and all you have is Microsoft Excel, I found out that the back end of Excel has Visual Studio, basically. So, I made a few games in Excel and whatnot, and that helped me actually do some teaching classes in Excel. So I got really good at Excel for a while, which is another weird skill. But yeah, so I'll say probably in the last maybe 5 years or so, I've gotten really good in this program called Game Maker. It uses this background language called GML, or Game Maker language. But that has really helped me make like applications and roll them out pretty easily. It's a very similar language to like Java and higher level languages. But I'm a big fan of it. The community's great. It's really easy to learn. The code is very forgiving. And I just kind of picked it up with a few tutorials here and there, and I've been running with that for quite a while. And I like to make a lot of games for friends and family. And of recently, I thought, okay, well, maybe I can dip my toes and maybe see if I can sell any of these things. I made a collection of smaller games, and so I like making games. I have a son, Benjamin, as well as I like making fun games. So a lot of them are kid appropriate or educational wise.
Right now on the screen we've had a few of your games playing here, and it just changed from the airplane shooting game to I think something else right here, which let's see what pulls up. But okay, so it's the robots, organics, humans. So just because this one's on our screen right now, just kind of walk me through what it is and maybe some of the background on making it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So ROH, yeah. So I wanted to make like a strategy, almost like a real-time game, like a StarCraft kind of thing. So a lot of times there's a micromanagement and macro management. If you're familiar with those games, like the original Warcraft, not World of Warcraft, but the original Warcraft games.
I like more turn-based strategies, kind of what I play, like the Fire Emblem and Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yeah.
So I'm somewhat familiar.
Yeah, so what's also nice about those turn-based ones is kind of like an auto battler, right? So it's kind of a mix where this one is you're not worrying about the micro, just the macro management, right? So the units, they come out of your base, they automatically capture the land resources, they automatically engage in enemies, and they'll automatically defeat the opponent. You're just controlling the overarching, like, okay, what do I upgrade? What do I, what path do I send them down? And like a lot of my games, I like to do multiplayer, like couch kind of style. So that one I made a while ago. But yeah, it's two people over a keyboard, and you're just pushing buttons 1, 2, 3, and 4, which makes it seem simple, but then it quickly gets quite chaotic, and it's a lot of fun.
Sometimes simple is all we need, though. I know when I come home from work, and I love my story-based games and the RPGs, role-playing games, but it's easy to get lost in a story, and you sometimes just want to come home and just smash some keyboard buttons and call it a day. I've like Vampire Survivors has been one that I've been playing for a little bit. And it's pretty mindless. You just run around in a circle, right, and just have fun with it. So little things like this, as I've called it, kind of like a mini game collection here. It's a nice change of pace because we see these big AAA titles, and I'm sure maybe you want to make bigger projects here and there in the future, but sometimes simple is best, and especially when we have such busy lives and we're not kids anymore who can tinker with all this stuff and we have full-time jobs, it can be kind of overwhelming to kind of stay in the flow of everything. So, Richard, I know you've been to the Lake George Gaming Expo before, which my friend Jacob here, he's not with us anymore, but he covered and met with one of the organizers. Tell me about, bringing your game collections to these different events and what that's been like, and also the reaction you've had from people.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, I've been making games over the years, and I finally got a collection of games that I think are pretty public facing, or at least they're not quite like standalone to sell. But like yeah, I can maybe package them together and
Shows
then
off your skill set and what you've done so
yeah.
far. Yeah.
So yeah, I've been traveling around to different gaming development conferences and whatnot, and it's not so much to sell anything, sell my games, more of to just get different feedback from people and kind of dip my toes in the business side of things to hopefully sell something.
Yeah. And when you have shown these games off and gone to these expos, what have you heard feedback when it comes to either a specific game or just the collection as a whole, or what have those conversations been like with people, or the pitch that you've given them?
Yeah, so I've had a lot of good success going to there's a Rochester game development events, and they actually had 2 events this year, which were a lot of fun. And yeah, I met a lot of great people out in Rochester as well as Lake George. And it really helps giving different feedback. And it sounds kind of weird, but I found my niche actually is like teenagers, it seems. So when you're trying to show people, hey, here's some games, and you're showing your parents or your friends or whatever, it's a very small inside circle, right? So it's hard to get that realistic feedback. But going to these events and you can actually, hey, here's a game, see if you can figure it out. You have your help menus, tutorials. And yeah, I found out that teenagers, they just pick up the game and they go, yep, I know how to play, and immediately go through it and go, oh, okay. And then they love the action, they love the competition. And yeah, I do make these smaller engagement games, fighting jet fighters where you're just going at it and blasting each other. And yeah, and it helps a lot for myself because when you're a solo developer, you have like a bank of passion that needs to drive these games to completion. I think that's where a lot of people fail. There's a common phrase in the indie world too, where it's the last 10% of the work takes 90% of the effort. So many game developers get stuck in that last little bit where they can't get it finished. I'm not sure why I have great success with that, but maybe I'm stubborn. But yeah, I like to finish the game. Say, hey, look, this is what I have to show for, whether it's something small or whatnot. And when I go to the conventions, this is one of the things I kind of I don't say push, but I kind of ask for donations with it. But it's just a little USB stick. It has all my games on it. It has my contact information, email stuff. And I usually go around and I basically ask for $20 donations, or if anyone really wants it, I usually end up just giving it to them. But yeah, I even say if you want into my future games, I say, hey, email me and I'll give you my games for free. And I even encourage people to share them. There's no digital rights protection on them. I just want people to have fun, so just to share them with their friends and whatnot.
I'm going to quiz you here. Not that I know the answer on this one,
sure.
but how much storage does your game collection take up on that flash drive?
Oh, not much. Like I said, I make pretty small in games. I'm not making anything like AAA wise, but I think these are like 16 gig USB sticks, and maybe like half of it or less is used up. So I got a lot of room to grow as far as making more games and more content.
I'll say that you got it right. Like I said, not that I know, but. Now, when it comes to the future of what you're looking at here, I know like you've said, and I keep going back to this minigame collection, which I call it that because I think of things like WarioWare or UFO 30 or similar games that have garnered certainly a fan base or some traction here. But looking more bigger picture, what are your plans for making games that go a little farther than this, or is more than just kind of like a one shtick sort of an approach?
Yeah. So some of the larger games that I include on the USB stick there, like ROH. Let's see, there's a pirate game on there. Some of those, they actually took me about a year or 2 years to design. Like Railgun Command took me over 2 years. So at that level of project, it's a considerable time investment. But obviously going to conventions and just selling a few USB sticks here and there, that's not going to I'll say pay the bills or help spread the game. And mostly, at least with my current job, that's paying the bills. I'm not concerned about the money-wise of things. But, yeah, I think you do have to hit the larger stores like Steam or Epic Games and that kind of thing to hit the broader audience, to get the thousands of numbers up there. So, yeah, I am currently working on a larger game to maybe for pushing to that market. I could talk about my game I'm currently developing, if you like.
Yeah, go right for it. I want to hear about it.
Great. Okay. So it's a bit of silly, and I like to make a lot of action games, but I'm also a fan of a lot of these older arcade games that use light guns. You may have heard of certain games like Lethal Enforcer or Terminator, where you have those light guns and two people throw in their quarters and they're blasting at the screen.
Does Duck Hunt count as one of those?
Yeah, Duck Hunt. It's actually quite amazing. Light guns have been around for a very long time, and they're still very popular. So yeah, I'm making a game called I Have Two Guns. And I was actually inspired when my son, we went to Chuck E. Cheese, and he had those infinite Game Pass things. And he swiped the Terminator game and then just ran off doing whatever. And I was like, okay, well, then I had two of the joysticks playing the Terminator game. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I can kind of multitask at it, you know? So I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll make a video game where you're controlling two cursors at the same time. So yeah, I'm making this game called I Have Two Guns, where you're trying to control two cursors shooting at two targets back and forth. And I want to incorporate, keyboard, mouse, Xbox joystick, and light guns of various kinds, whether it's the Wii remote on the PC or retro shooter controllers for the PC. So I'm kind of making all the controls work at all the time. But yeah, using light guns, I think there's a whole community of people that are very hungry for light gun games on the PC. So I'm trying to get that area as well.
Yeah, it sounds like a good VR experience. I'm thinking of I don't have a VR headset myself, but I've played it. That one where when you move, all the other characters move, and it's like a shooter.
Yeah.
Can't come up with the name right now, but it kind of reminds me of something like that. And I know playing it that one time was good.
Arizona Sunshine, I think it is.
Probably.
Yeah.
It's been a hot minute.
Yeah.
One thing though that we mentioned really quick that I want to go back to is you talk about how long it makes you to make some of these games, and just as a solo developer, you have graphics, you have music, you have the code, and there's just so much, a big picture here. So how do you balance all that between all those different aspects of what needs to be made into the game? Do you find yourself outsourcing some of the stuff like graphics to people that you know, or you pay people, or you just make it all yourself, and some things you're really good at and other things you kind of take your time with? And there's a lot here, and it's very much an art form when it comes to making a game.
Absolutely. So it takes a lot of work making a video game, especially at whatever levels you're looking at. Scope creep is real, right? So if you're ever thinking about getting to game development, just realizing you want to start very, very small. Make something simple, maybe copy something. But now that I've been doing it for so long, I kind of try to correctly scope out a project. I had a book. I got off Amazon. I forgot what it's called, Game Development something or other. But it talked about the 5 different categories that you have to kind of, if you're all by yourself, you have to do all the categories. Somebody has to think about the sound effects and all this stuff. And a lot of times I'm the weakest in the graphics side of things. You look at ROH, where I made all the art for that, and I'm not a very good artist, so it gets the job done. I think there is a lot of wiggle room. Like you talked about Vampire Survivors, where the graphics are very minimum, but people really need to focus on, especially the triple game industry. It's not about the graphics. There's a huge push nowadays for retro stuff, where they want the gameplay and the gameplay loop. Like, is the thing fun? Is the game experience good?
I know I love pixel art. It's definitely my favorite.
Yeah.
I love fancy graphics, but just the simplicity of it, and how you have to be really creative with something that's already creative, with that minimal space, and just getting those pixels and the colors just right to really illustrate something large in a small space. I don't know. It's a perfect mix.
I think what's helped me a bunch, everyone has their own solutions to it. Sort of, at least the cheating avenue that I take. A little plug for a Humble Bundle, or if you've ever heard of that. So they have these packages every now and then where they're time sensitive. They're more like donation wise as well. They're very cheap, but all of these content creators, as far as art, 2D graphics or sound effects or music, they put these packages together, and for $20 you get literally thousands of dollars worth of assets. And I kind of growing up, I used to see these CDs where they're like, oh, we'll get 10,000 songs for $5, stuff like that. So Humble Bundle sells these massive packages, and you actually get the commercial license with them too. And I always, throughout the years, been buying these packages. So now I have a massive library I'm able to use commercially for free. and that helps me. I can always jump in there. I say it's like a kid playing through like a Legos. You ever take a bunch of Legos and dump them out, and you're kind of digging through all these assets. Okay, well, I got, pictures of a knight here, and I got pictures of a cowboy here, and maybe I can make a cowboy game, and rummaging around with different sound effects. And to me, that helps take care of that. Coming up with ideas is always easy. I do like to say to people, like, I heard of somewhere, like, where ideas are actually worthless, it's the action put towards the ideas. And that always kind of grounds things. Like, oh, I have an idea for a game. Okay, well, can you put it into action? Can you put it 2 years into it? Is the idea still good then? And so game design, I think I have lots of ideas. The art, I kind of use Humble Bundle a lot.
Very fair.
And the programming, I'm a mediocre programmer. You don't got to be that great. So, but I'm very persistent with it. So, yeah, that's where I stick with that.
When it comes to being a game developer and getting started and learning, growing, and the whole big picture here, what do you recommend to people who are watching? Maybe they're younger, maybe they're older, doesn't matter, and are interested in this. How have you found that it's been easy to learn or grow, or maybe some local spaces in the capital region area that you've really bounced off of? Anything like that?
Yeah, excellent. So a big thing that helped me a lot in the last year, I joined a local community group called Tech Valley Game Space. Was it TGIS or something? Or
TVGS? Yep, I've heard of them before. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that helped me actually connect with more local peers and get their experience. And some of them have been in the AAA studio business, and some of them are just the local stuff. Some of them want to get in. Some of them are fresh from college. So it's a great mixture, and it's amazing to see everyone at different paths and different levels, different goals, and all that kind of thing. So that helped me a bunch. So definitely want to reach out. It's very hard working with other people for lots of reasons. I mean, you have your ideas. Controlling a project is crazy. You don't have to worry about working with others and that overhead when you're just by yourself. But you run out of energies quick. So, but definitely branch out and help each other.
Before we go, I'm going to let you finish your thought, though, but we're getting towards the end. We have right now up the ways to reach you. If you just want to say that out loud for if anyone wants to check out your games or get a hold of you, now's that chance for you.
Oh, great. Okay, yeah. So angryhammergames.com. That's a website. It has a lot of my contact information out there. I have a Discord link with a QR code. You can just shoot that or just click on that if you want. Chat with me. Email me, angryhammergames@gmail.com. I'm very open. If you want to play my games, I'll probably just give you a link to download them. So if you want to talk about game dev, I'll also have to talk about that.
And before we head out, any last thoughts that you want to leave anybody, or continue where I also rudely cut you off? It's open mic for you.
Oh, yeah. Well, game development is, especially video game development, I don't want to say it's for everyone. So you have to be somewhat decent with navigating around a computer. And you have to really be able to drive a project to completion. And at least from my experience, no one's going to teach you how to teach yourself. So there's lots of resources out there to help you, but you have to be able to grab it yourself and drive your passion and whatnot. But currently, at least for me and others that I talk to, especially in the AAA industry, it really doesn't pay the bills right now. So definitely look for other avenues. But it's a great hobby for anyone. Making board games is very similar to making video games as far as the design-wise. So, I guess.
We've touched on that space before, too, when it comes to the local board game, card game, hangouts, making all the games. That's what we do on here. But thank you very much, Richard, for first, again, joining us here on Christmas Eve and taking some time out of your day. We really appreciate that. And I'm sure we'll send you back to go play your games with your son and have all that craziness going on. But again, thanks for joining us, and we'd love to catch back up with you when you got some more stuff going on, and we'll see you then. Yeah. So, and for everyone watching, thanks for watching, and you'll catch this when this airs probably next week. But for where we're at now, happy holidays and happy New Year.
Happy holidays.